Hey guys, sorry this video took a while to make. I was quite sick for some time, and I started in a new job. I do have to prioritize the job that feeds my family. Anyway, I thank you for your patience. I wanted to talk about these clips from the Majority Report, when they prove how ahistorical and stupid they are.
Here's Ben Shapiro. He's upset about the casting choices of Netflix.
Ben Shapiro was complaining about this Netflix documentary on Queen Cleopatra and the weird decision to cast her as a black woman. And it wasn't just Ben Shapiro, judging by the amount of dislikes the Netflix trailer has. And even the Majority Report's own fans seem to agree with Shapiro in this case, judging by their dislike bar and their comment section.
The notion that Cleopatra was black is silly. I mean, again, you're allowed to do this in Hollywood because, of course, the only thing that matters is our weird, parochially American perception of what race matters. It's super, super strange. By the way, we actually have sculptures of Cleopatra. It's not as though there's like nothing to indicate what Cleopatra looked like. There's a Roman sculpture of Cleopatra.
An extremely reasonable take from Ben. But of course the Majority Report has to disagree with it. But on this occasion, it was too stupid even for the Majority Report's fans not to see through.
It's the left that's being parochial. Not the guy that can't go on a map and see which continent is Egypt on. Ben. Facts over feelings. Ben Shapiro doesn't understand that,
it's
like...
the north of...
Yeah.
Africa.
Good job, Bradley.
Oh my god. That has to be one of the stupidest takes Emma has ever given. And that's extremely hard to do, given her track record and lack of intelligence. Is every single person who lives in Africa black? Do you think Elon Musk's skin was white? No. Don't you have a map? He was born in Africa. He's clearly black. We can just ignore Cleopatra's known ancestry. Because she ruled in Africa, she's automatically black. As soon as you step foot in the continent of Africa, you just become black. That's the way it works. Your ancestry doesn't matter anymore.
He doesn't seem to understand that, his own fanciful notions of what Cleopatra looked like. Maybe he saw Elizabeth Taylor at one point play her. That's informed by your culture. That's informed by what you were fed as a child.
No. Ignoring the fact that Ben cited evidence, any historian will tell you that there's no evidence at all that she was black.
And they, by and large, there's very little evidence that they ever married anybody who wasn't also Greek. Indeed, sometimes brothers and sisters married, which was an Egyptian practice, one that the Greeks actually detested. So really, all the evidence we have, including also the visual evidence, because there are quite a lot of portraits which are thought to be of Cleopatra, you can't always be sure, show her looking very, very Greek. In fact, all her predecessors, apart from herself, none of them even spoke the Egyptian language.
So Ben's notion of her skin color comes from evidence and probability.
I remember my grandmother saying to me, I don't care what they tell you in school, Cleopatra was black.
I don't care what those dang historians and teachers try to tell you, because the grandmother of this random person said she was black. So it must be true. Ignore all evidence.
Someone mentions, I just saw this in the YouTube chat, but someone, even if she were, I think she might have been ethnically Macedonian and then it was in Egypt, like even if she was Greek, Macedonian, whatever, the idea that like that means she's white or like white presenting, like if she was Greek and Macedonian, she's not going to look like JD Vance. Like,
no.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they have darker pigments too.
One of their fans has to point out live how stupid Emma's point is about the geography of Africa. Okay, she mightn't be as white as JD Vance, but that doesn't mean she was black, which is the whole point.
There should be only a Macedonian actress should play Cleopatra. It's just absurd. Do you think the same height that the actress who has played Cleopatra has ever been the same height as Cleopatra was?
Another stupid non-point from the team. We try to make our portrayals of real people accurate. Obviously, we're not going to get it down to the last detail of having the exact same height. Would he feel comfortable if we cast a midget as Martin Luther King? No, because while the actor who should play Martin Luther King mightn't be the exact same height, we want some form of realism. The next clip is the same idiots rambling about Oppenheimer and the dropping of the nuclear bombs on Japan.
But it is good that we are beginning to at least talk a little bit more about the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
I worry that we have people like Destiny out here that we're actually going backwards in our understanding of that stuff, because we've got a lot of edgelords saying that actually it was good and we needed to do it, even though it's fucking 70 years later, and that's not the line that scholarship is taking.
That's not the line that scholarship is taking. Whether or not the dropping of the nuclear bombs on Japan was justified or not is highly debated. But these idiots are removing all nuance and pretending it's a settled science.
Well, then let's be unambiguous in our coverage of it here.
Yeah.
We dropped 2 bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki when Japan had no feasible way to win the war.
Their strategy wasn't to win the war. Just for transparency, I'll be referencing heavily from Road to Surrender, a really good book on the topic that I recommend. In it, he argues just that the Japanese don't have to win. They just have to make the cost of victory so unbearable to the Americans that they won't have to make concessions. Imagine how grueling the war was. Americans were faced with 2,000 kamikaze planes during the Battle of Okinawa.
There were some hardliners within their own government who wanted to continue to drag it out.
Again, all nuance lost. There were some hardliners. Anami, the Minister of War, ordered the Special Higher Police, sometimes called the Thought Police, to arrest 400 people suspected of end-of-war sentiments. In June 1945, 2 months before the bombs were dropped, Japanese mid-level officers prepared a document, Fundamental Policy to be Followed Henceforth in the Conduct of War, stating Japan will fight to the bitter end.
And that is why, in part, we dropped those 2 weapons that incinerated school children, wiped people out. What's the estimate now? It's a little under 200,000 people.
This is pure virtue signaling. Yes, Emma, innocent people die in war, and that's sad. Nobody's making that argument. The number of people who died from the atomic bombs pales in comparison to how many had already died and how many would have died if America had to invade Japan. They're trying to downplay the impossible decision Truman had to make. He had to take lives to save lives.
They were civilians. These were people that were not involved in the war effort, and we did it in order to show American might looking ahead to our rivalry with the Soviet Union.
Japan was engaged in total war. All men from 15 to 60 and women from 17 to 40 nationwide were required to join the National Volunteer Corps. And notice how they don't offer any solutions. How do you end the war with a country that doesn't want to surrender and whose cruelty matched the Nazis and often exceeded it?
The image says from Roman Helmet Guy, I have blood on my hands. And then it's an image of Truman saying, never let that crybaby in here again.
I think that's from the movie. That's a quote.
As usual, out of all the idiots on the Majority Report, Emma just wants to be the stupidest one and has to say the stupidest thing. You know he actually said that, right? It's not just a quote from the movie. I know this is hard for the people who want Cleopatra to be portrayed as black to understand. But sometimes filmmakers try to portray history realistically based on what happened. I know, it's a crazy concept.
Truman say, never let that crybaby in here again.
I think that's from the movie. That's a quote.
Yeah, Oppenheimer, I think I've heard of him. He's like a character in the Christopher Nolan film. You know he was a real person, right, Emma? Try to keep up with the rest of the class, Emma.
Yeah, and go to Kelsey Atherton's clip here. Kelsey writes, the main reason there wasn't a third bomb dropped on Japan is because after Nagasaki, Truman ordered a halt to all atomic bombing unless he gave direct authorization, his first affirmative order over nuclear weapons. Reports of the bomb killing children motivated this halt. So right there already, we've collapsed the actual nuance into the decision into, oh, he was a macho guy doing like the Bernie meme saying yes.
Oh yes, they would never collapse nuance. And the main reason they didn't drop a third bomb was because they didn't have one.
And the reason the reason also that we didn't drop that third bomb was eventually the emperor decided that it was time to surrender, essentially. But the whole notion of what this kind of weaponry does in killing civilians, the military justification is that, well, once the regular people feel what their government is doing in the war, that the people in power are more likely to capitulate to our demands because there will be domestic anger.
Completely brain dead take. The point was to make them surrender, and it worked. So what are you talking about? And it's also ignoring the Japanese civilians who thought the emperor was God and were unwilling to surrender either. They're not making any points or offering any alternative solutions because they don't have any. They just have the America bad brain rot.